Hi everyone, this is Yana, and today I want to share a video tutorial for the cards I created and shared on the Spellbinders blog on April 14th, 2015 using one of their new dies, the Circle Delight die template from the Heart and Home collection. I've created two slightly different projects using the same die, and I'll walk you through the creation of one of them in this video, and I'll also share the other one at the end. So here's a look at most of the dies that I plan to be using for today's cards. Here I have the three larger dies from the Circle Delight set. There's also one more smaller die that I will not be using today. I will be combining this set with the standard Circles small set of dies to create additional layers for my cards. I also want to use one of the Card Creator border dies. These two are from the A2 Scalloped Borders 1 set. Here you can see the rest of the designs. The reason I've picked the two dies that you see on my cutting mat is because I find that the designs of the border matches to the second die in the Circle Delight set. And whenever I can, I always try to match the designs of different dies as they make my cards look more natural, I guess. And they also look like they come from one set of dies, when in reality those are completely different sets. As for the standard circles, I'll be using die number 6 for the larger Circle Delight and die number 4 for the smaller one, or for the medium Circle Delight die. So let's go ahead and begin die cutting all of our elements out. I'm going to be using stunning papers from first edition for my cards today. These are among my favorite to create elegant cards. This particular paper that I have here is actually embossed. You can see the back that the roses have a slight embossed detail. Looks very, very lovely. I'm going to be die cutting Circle Delight dies out of regular white cardstock. These are detailed designs and I don't want that detail to be lost, so I'm using white card. I find it best to use solid color cardstock for shapes like this to preserve that detail. If I were to cut those out of patterned paper, these wouldn't look as pretty, I think. As always, I'm taping my dies down to my paper to make sure they stay in place and sending them through my Artisan Explorer machine. One of my YouTube subscribers asked me about the difference between the Artisan Explorer machine and the Grand Caliber machines from Spellbinders. So the only difference that these two have is in the size of the dies that they are able to cut. For example, if I were to use any of the 5x7 Card Creator dies, I won't be able to cut those in my Artisan Explorer machine simply because those dies are too wide for this machine. So I would use my Grand Caliber then. I use my Grand Caliber machine when I'm making larger cards or when I need to cut a larger element. My personal favorite is Artisan Explorer machine because it's small and it doesn't take a lot of room on my table, while the Grand Caliber is a much bigger machine and it takes a lot more room. So I keep the Artisan Explorer on my table and the Grand Caliber on a shelf near my table, but Artisan Explorer stays on my table all the time. So let's go back to our project. After I've die cut the pieces, I'm also going to emboss them to give them a little bit more detail. I'm also going to use my tool-in-one and pop the tiny openings in the larger Circle Delight die cut. These have been cut, but because they are so small, you sometimes need to pop them using a paper piercer. So that's what I'm going to do using the piercing end of my tool-in-one. So here are the three die cut Circle Delight circles. All of these look amazing. I'm going to set them aside for now and begin cutting standard circles out of patterned paper. Because this circle shape is much simpler, I can easily cut it out of patterned paper and I won't lose any detail this way. Again, I'm cutting and also embossing this piece to add that additional detail and a bit more dimension. I'm going to be adhering all of these circles together using foam adhesive to create the main element for my card. Here's one more example using a different patterned paper. This one is also from first edition from Bella Rose 12x12 pad, and I don't think I've mentioned that before. So this is actually the patterned paper that I'm using today for both of my cards. I've also gone ahead and die cut two pieces using border die, one with a scalloped-like edge out of white cardstock, and notice again that since this is a more detailed die cut, I used solid colored cardstock so that I don't lose any of the detail. And then I have one more piece cut of patterned paper using the edge die without any detail. I'm hoping this makes sense to you and that I'm not confusing anyone. I really don't know a better way to describe this. I'm going to layer two pieces together and then adhere both onto my panel, cut out of patterned paper using die number 7, that is the largest one from the A2 Knitting Basics A set. Notice that I'm only adding adhesive to the center of this element. I don't want to have any adhesive on the sides, as I know I will be adding machine stitching there, and having this kind of adhesive where the seam is going to be can damage the needle of your sewing machine. The adhesive can build up on the needle, so try to avoid adding adhesive to any areas where you plan to add stitching to. And you don't really need to adhere this piece that firmly, it's going to be stitched down in place anyways. So here's what my panel looks like. It's going to be a base panel for my project. I'm going to be adding this directly onto my card base. You can see I've added stitching on all 4 sides and secured the leftover thread on the back using some tape. Now it's time to adhere our main element. I'm going to make sure I've aligned this piece on my cutting mat so that everything will be centered on this project. I've also added a bunch of foam adhesive squares to the back of my circles. I love to have a lot of dimension on my Spellbinders cards, unlike my other clean and simple projects, so I often use a lot of foam adhesive squares or foam adhesive tape. Today I'm using white, but I also like to use black foam adhesive squares and tape if I'm making a card using darker colors of pattern paper or cardstock. I'm going to use one of the die cuts from the Circle Delight set to create corners for my card. I find that corners like these help to frame the project and tie everything together on a card. I'm going to create 2 corners by cutting one smaller piece in half. I'm eyeballing the center, but you can of course measure everything and make sure it's absolutely perfect. Now I need to find the center of the semicircle, and I know that the diameter of this one is 2 inches, so I need to create a 1-inch mark to know where to create my score lines. Instead of using a pencil, I'm simply going to press into the paper with the piercing end of my tool-in-one to create a barely visible indentation. I usually use a pencil, but my table was extremely messy at the moment and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I had to improvise. Now I'm going to use the scoring blade and score 2 lines going from the center, where I've created that mark, to one of the little scalloped pieces there. I'm trying to have these scored at 90-degree angle to create a corner. It really is a very simple task, and it's just a new way and a fun way to stretch your dies a bit. Once I have both lines scored, I can go ahead and fold this piece, creating a corner for my card. Now I need to score the second one and adhere both onto the top corners of my project. I'm using liquid glue and binder clips to hold them in place so that I can free my hands up to work on something else like a sentiment for this project. I'm going to be using this sentiment from Alt New, saying your kindness makes such a difference, and I'm going to be embossing it onto a strip of cardstock vellum using white embossing powder. I've prepped my vellum with an anti-static powder pouch, and this is a must-have and a must-do when working with vellum to make sure you keep your embossing nice and clean. I'm going to ink up my stamp using clear sticky ink and stamp the sentiment in the center. Next, I added white embossing powder and heat set it using my heat tool. Once my sentiment is ready, I can add it to my card. I'm going to do this by folding the vellum and creating flaps. By the time I got to the sentiment, I actually found one of the pencils on my table, so I'm going to use it to mark the ends of the top patterned paper circle on my vellum. This is where I will be making the score lines to fold the vellum. I'm folding it slightly further away, about 1/16 of an inch, so that it's not too tight there. I'm going to trim some leftover vellum and insert my vellum sentiment in between the layers. I haven't yet pressed very hard onto the foam adhesive, so I can still move it around a bit and lift it up without damaging my card. You could, if you wanted, die cut a tag or something like that and have your sentiments stamped or heat embossed there and adhere the tag on top of the circles. But I wanted to do something new and different, so that's why I used vellum and folded it instead of adhering directly on top of the top circle. I am now going to add white floss. I'm wrapping it around a couple of times and tying it into a bow on the right hand side of my card. I can now add foam adhesive to the back of this panel and adhere it onto an A2 top folding card base created out of white cardstock. One final touch is left. I'm going to adhere a few white pearls from one to scrap to highlight my sentiment. I'm adding 3 below and also 3 above the vellum piece. Here's a look at one more cards created using the same supplies. Here I layered one more circle die cut from the Circle Delight set and created a few more layers and additional dimension on my project. I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Which project do you like best? The one with less or the one with more layers? I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see more videos using products from Spellbinders, please click the link you see on the screen. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I have new videos coming out every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.